worked night shifts for a highway emergency dispatch service in Montana. If someone's car broke down on a rural stretch of road, our office handled it. Tow trucks, stranded motorists, winter rescues. The shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., dead quiet most nights. This happened in January during a storm bad enough that the state was warning people not to drive at all. Around 2:40 a.m., I got a call, no caller ID. That wasn't unusual. A lot of emergency phones along the highway don't show numbers. I answered the standard way. Highway assistance, what's your location? It was wind on the line, heavy wind. And then a man's voice, strained and breathless. He said,
I'm at mile marker 187. My car won't start. I can see the road, but it's really dark.
I pulled up the map. Mile marker 187 was a real place, but it wasn't supposed to be accessible anymore. That stretch had been closed 2 winters earlier after a rock slide wiped out part of the road. I told him that area was shut down. Then he said, very quietly,
I know. I went around the barrier.
That already bothered me, but people do stupid things all the time. I asked him what kind of car he had. He said,
I don't know.
That stopped me. I asked him to repeat himself. He said,
I don't remember what I'm driving. I just know I was trying to get home.
I asked if he could turn his hazard lights on. He said,
They won't stay on. Everything keeps turning off.
While we talked, I noticed something else. Our system logs every emergency phone on the highway. The phone at mile marker 187 was listed as removed. I asked him if he was calling from his cell phone. Then he said,
There's a phone here, on a pole. It's already ringing.
My stomach dropped. That phone line was disconnected years ago. I muted my mic and called State Patrol on a second line, told them exactly what he was saying. They went quiet. One of them finally said, That's where the crash was. I asked, what crash? He told me that 3 winters ago, during a storm just like this, a man ignored the road closure and drove into the dark. They found his car crushed at the bottom of the ravine days later. No body. I unmuted the call. The man's breathing had gotten heavier. He said,
I think I hear someone else out here. I see headlights, but they're not moving right.
I asked him to stay in his car. He said,
I don't think I'm in it anymore.
That's when the line started cutting in and out. Between the static, I heard something else, a second voice. It sounded like it was right next to him. He suddenly said, It's cold.
I don't remember getting out. I don't remember crashing.
I tried to keep my voice calm, told him help was on the way, even though patrol had already told me they weren't sending anyone until daylight. He asked me something then. He said,
Can you see me on your screen?
I checked the cameras automatically. There was only one camera that ever covered that stretch, and it hadn't moved since the closure. But it was on. And there was something standing at the edge of the road, not waving, not moving, just standing there facing the camera. I told him I couldn't see him. He went quiet for a few seconds. Then he said,
That's good. I don't think I'm supposed to be seen.
The call ended on its own. No hang-up click, just silence. State Patrol searched the area after sunrise. They found fresh footprints in the snow, leading from the old emergency phone pole straight to the edge of the ravine. No tracks coming back. That emergency phone rang twice more that winter. We stopped answering it. I worked night security at a small manufacturing warehouse in upstate New York during the winter of 2021. There were always 2 guards scheduled overnight. One stayed in the front office, the other did hourly patrols around the building and parking lot. I was the front office guard. The other guy's name was Eric. Eric was quiet. Not rude, not strange, just quiet. He always checked in over the radio exactly on time, every hour, no exceptions. At 1 a.m. he'd say,
"Perimeter clear." At 2 a.m., "Perimeter clear." Same tone, same words, every single night.
Around mid-January, the weather got bad. Heavy snow, freezing temperatures. One night, Eric didn't radio in at 2 a.m. I waited. At 2:05, I called his name on the radio. No response. At 2:10, I tried again. Still nothing. That had never happened before. I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside to check the cameras first. The exterior cameras showed the parking lot, the loading docks, and the side of the building. Eric wasn't on any of them. Then I noticed something strange. The camera timestamps were off. One of them was running about 3 minutes behind the others. That shouldn't have been possible. As I watched, the delayed camera suddenly updated. Eric appeared on screen, standing still near the loading dock, facing the building, not moving. I radioed him immediately. He responded right away.
"Perimeter clear."
The words came out flat, too flat. I checked the clock. It was 2:43 a.m. That didn't make sense. I asked him where he was. There was a then. He said,
"On my route."
I didn't like how long it took him to answer. I watched the camera feed closely. Eric didn't move, not an inch. I told him to head back to the office. Another. Then, "Copy that." He still didn't move. That's when I realized something else. The delayed camera wasn't delayed anymore. It was live, which meant Eric had been standing there, unmoving, for at least several minutes. I left the office and walked toward the loading dock. Snow was falling hard, muffling sound. When I got there, Eric wasn't standing where the camera showed him, but his footprints were. They led up to the wall and stopped. I radioed his name again. This time, his voice came from behind me. "Perimeter clear." I spun around. Eric was standing a few feet away, too close. I hadn't heard him walk up. His face looked wrong. Not injured, not angry, just blank. Like he was exhausted in a way sleep wouldn't fix. I asked him how he got behind me. He didn't answer. Instead, he repeated, "Perimeter clear." Same tone, same words. I backed away and told him to return to the office. He watched me for a moment. Then he turned and walked into the darkness around the building. I didn't follow him. I locked myself in the office and called my supervisor. While I was on the phone, Eric's radio crackled. "Perimeter clear." I checked the clock. 3 a.m., exactly on time. The police arrived around 3:30. They searched the property. They found Eric's jacket near the loading dock, frozen stiff. No footprints leading away from it. The police asked me when I'd last seen him. I told them the truth about the camera, the radio, him standing behind me. One of the officers asked me something I still think about. He asked, "Are you sure you were talking to Eric?" Because Eric had called in sick that night. He never came to work. There was no second guard on shift. And the radio logs showed "perimeter clear" being transmitted every hour from Eric's radio until 6 a.m. I worked overnight security at a self-storage facility in rural Pennsylvania during the winter of 2022. It was one of those places off a highway exit, surrounded by woods and nothing else. My shift ran from midnight to 6 a.m., and most nights, nothing happened. That's why the job paid well. Around 2:17 a.m., one of the motion sensors tripped on my monitor, Unit C14. That wasn't unusual. Wind, animals, bad wiring, it happened all the time. I watched the camera feed for a moment. Nothing moved. I reset the alert and went back to scrolling on my phone. About a minute later, the same alert came back. Same unit. This time, I noticed something I hadn't before. The metal door of C14 was open just a few inches. That didn't make sense. I'd done a full perimeter check less than an hour earlier. Every unit was locked. I grabbed my flashlight and radio and stepped outside. The air was freezing, the kind of cold that makes everything feel quiet and heavy. Snow crunched under my boots as I walked down the road towards C14. The door was still open. Inside the unit, someone had clearly been living there. There was a folding chair, a thin blanket, empty canned food, even a small battery-powered heater. But what stood out most was how clean it was. No mess, no trash scattered around. It looked maintained. I radioed back to the office and reported a trespasser. Then I stepped back outside the unit. That's when I heard movement. Not from inside the unit, from behind me. I turned around, expecting to see someone running or hiding between the rows. There was no one there, but the snow behind me had fresh footprints in it. They hadn't been there before. They led away from the unit and stopped suddenly in the middle of the row, like whoever made them had just vanished. I stood there longer than I should have. Then I did what I was trained to do. I went back to the office and locked the door. On the security cameras, I watched the row where C14 was located. The unit door was now completely closed. I know it was, because I hadn't closed it. I zoomed in on the camera feed. The metal door had scratches on the inside, long marks like fingernails. At around 4 a.m., the motion sensor went off again. This time, it wasn't just C14. It was C13, then C15, in order, like something was moving down the row. But the cameras showed nothing. No shadow, no figure, just empty snow. At the end of my shift, the police arrived to check the unit. They searched C14 thoroughly. No one was inside. Before they left, one of the officers pulled a small notebook from behind the chair. He flipped through it silently, then looked at me. Inside were dates. Every page had the same thing written over and over. Times, between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Next to each time were descriptions of sounds, footsteps, metal door, someone breathing. The last page was different. It only had one line. Tonight, it followed me. I quit that job 2 days later. The unit is still rented. No one has ever come to claim it. And the motion sensor on C14 was eventually disabled because it wouldn't stop detecting movement.